Hi everyone. Today we're going to go talk to Dr. Paul Smith. Paul came and spent a week of vintage with us a few years ago, and he was at that time working at the Australian Wine Research Institute. So Paul's a scientist, not a chemist, but he can probably explain more about that, definitely more about that than me. But we try and host a scientist from the AWRI every year, or someone that works there, to come and see what life is like in a little winery that likes to use the results of their research, but definitely isn't equipped to do any of that ourselves. So we participate by sampling some of our wines and things. In particular, we've loved a natural ferment trial that Anthony Borman's been looking after for probably the last 4 or 5 years, and that is us sampling ferments at the start when we first pick, and then when the yeast first take off, and then later parts, and then right at the end when it's finished, to look at the diversity of yeast. But Paul works in chemistry and microbiology, obviously quite interrelated in a product like wine. And when Paul was here, we found that Paul's quite a cook and a really keen gardener. So these garden beds behind me here, our wicking beds, they were created by Paul when he was here, and through summer we just don't have to water them quite as much. They're fantastic. And so one night over dinner, Paul said that he'd really like to come back to us the following year, and I was like, you're welcome. We'd love to have you back for vintage. And he said, no, I want to come back as an artist. And that just, hit me in the sense that scientists that see themselves as artists. And so we hatched a plan that he could maybe do sculpture. It was his idea to do sculpture, and came up with these chicken wire diagrams, which we talk about chemical compounds when I go to a conference and my head's exploding watching the latest research, and I'm like, oh no, not more chicken wire diagrams. So these are literally wine products sculpted out of chicken wire using bottle caps that we saved. And this one in particular, Rotundone, was a compound that the Australian Wine Research Institute was very excited to isolate in Shiraz, because some Australian Shiraz in certain areas, particularly cool climates, has that beautiful aromatic pepper character, and particularly kind of black pepper, but we go through different spices and things. But that cracked black pepper is Rotundone. So that's in black pepper, but it's also been isolated in wine. So that was some pretty profound research that the Australian Wine Research Institute came up with in relationship with industry. So that is one. There's this one, which is benzene methane thiol, so benzyl mercaptan.
How do you say that?
I just said it. And that's a compound that gives some of those beautiful kind of struck match flinty characters in Chardonnay that I really like. So that was one that appealed to me. And then this last one is piperitone, and so that's was first reported in Bordeaux in Cabernet wines, and so it's that kind of minty character. So being in Coonawarra, we see that kind of aromatic minty character in some sites, particularly for Coonawarra. Other sites we don't see it, and it's not the same as eucalyptus, so that's really important as well. That's eucalyptol. So that was another one that kind of appealed to me from a regionality point of view. But I just loved Paul coming to stay with us. I loved even more that he brought his family back for the arts festival, that his wife and kids got to see him as an artist for a weekend, and it was great that his exhibition sold out. And it wasn't just me, we got these ones, but he sold out of all of them and got extra commissions he wanted to do. So I'm going to log out and Paul will log in, and we'll see you. Happy Mother's Day to all the mothers out there for tomorrow.
Happy Mother's Day.
And we're very excited that people in South Australia can go camping and glamping.
We're going to the Flinders Range.
Yes, Maggie's excited. In July we're going to go to the Flinders, and maybe some of you can come visit us. Bye bye.
Hello there, and welcome wherever you are in the world watching this. As Sue's just introduced, my name's Paul Smith, and I'm a wine scientist, but more importantly for today, a long-term friend of Sue and of Bellwether. So I'm really happy to be here and share some of the experiences I've had with Sue, and share a little bit about my life and experiences. So I'm on the back steps of my house, out in the garden. I'm hoping the weather stays okay. If it gets too windy or the rain comes in, I'll have to bail out. But yeah, I just thought I'd take the opportunity today to share some of my experiences. Sue's just outlined a few of them, and I can just talk a bit about it from my perspective. I knew Sue from about 20 years ago, when I started working as a scientist at the Australian Wine Research Institute, running research projects there, trying to understand structure and function and properties of molecules in wines, and why they give the characters they give, and how we can manage them and manipulate them. And I currently work with Wine Australia, and they are the body responsible for marketing and regulatory and R&D investment. So still enjoying really deep engagement with the sector. But I guess my history, as I said, started interacting with Sue when she worked at Stonehaven, just up the road from where she is now. It was a very modern facility then, and we started talking very early on about tannins and the science of wine, and she was obviously very technically skilled but very curious. So we've had 20 years of fabulous conversations about the art and creativity of wine production, but also the science behind it. So when I went down there in 2017, I really just wanted an experience of being on the tools, seeing the daily decisions that have to be made, and just getting a sense of what production's like, even though Bellwether's a very small facility, obviously, but the wines are fabulous, and obviously Sue has a particular ethos about how they're made, and the use of uninoculated fermentations and sourcing fruit from a really interesting range of different parts of the world, parts of the country. So I remember that the Riesling from Tasmania coming up in a tanker when I was there, and being pumped out and seeing it sort of from its birth, I guess, and then also there's some fabulous fruit from the Riverland, Nero d'Avola, and some varieties that are really starting to see greater acceptance in Australia. So it was fabulous to be in the winery. Plunging was a bit of a sobering experience for someone who's usually fairly desk bound. Certainly each night the shoulders were a bit sore, but plunging was really fabulous, because a lot of the work that I've done in the past has been to understand extractability. So grapes come into the winery and they're full of all sorts of fabulous molecules that we need, and we have to get them out of the grapes somehow. And tannins in particular give colour stability and mouthfeel and texture to wines, and a plunging process is a really critical part of that. So to have gone from kind of the academic consideration of extraction and why tannins are important to wines like Sue's, through to actually really seeing the evolution of colour and extraction over 7 days was a fabulous experience. And the whole time, of course, I was staying in the bell tents out in the paddock next door, and listening to the sounds of the night and the really clear night skies. Seeing the stars was brilliant. I grew up in the country, and I was completely used to pitch black nights and bright skies where you can see the stars, and that all really came flooding back when I was down there. As Sue said, we've been down with the family since, and that's a really fabulous experience for us to be able to just be in that real stillness and real quiet. So we have a shared love of gardening, so we talked a lot about gardening. When I was down there, I helped them build some garden beds, 3 garden beds, which are in the front there as you drive in from the main road. And those beds are wicking beds, so they've got a water reservoir at the bottom of them, and they're self-watering. So they, even when it's really, really hot, they'll just keep drawing water up and growing the vegetables. So we had a fabulous time building those and commissioning them, and they're still there ticking away in the background. Seeing Sue manhandle with a fork a sack truck all the way from a paddock all the way across to where we built them, and then angle grinding them into 3 pieces was quite a spectacle. Certainly nothing that she's not frightened to tackle. And Ian Rennie, who was down there at the time, a friend of Bellwether, he cut them open and had a fabulous kind of experience watching sparks flying everywhere. But that gardening side of things is something that we share, and I'm outside, so I'll take a quick sneak peek at the garden here. So these are my wicking beds, and we've got a lot of leafy veg at the moment, really cranking along. So they've all got a reservoir underneath them. These are some quinces harvested yesterday, and I'll tell you a story about those in a second. And then the last of summer's basil, a lot of kale at the moment. A bit of Bellwether Riesling, yeah, I forgot about that. And some peas and spring onions and things. So we talk a lot about gardening. Cooking in my house tends to be a fairly improvised process. That really kind of, I think, works with the culture of Bellwether. And one of the most fabulous memories I have of that trip is spontaneously using quinces. So Sue had a whole lot of quinces and sort of didn't quite know what to do with them. So in the end, we just chopped them in half and put them in an oven and roasted them most of the afternoon. And she had a side of pork which went into the oven too for a long time. And in the end, this amazing meal came together on the shearing shed table, which is out the back, and I'll just remember that meal forever. I don't quite know why, but it was the friendship and the quinces, and just amazing. I mean, I live in a vegetarian household too, so I tend to remember when I get meat. It's quite a really special moment for me, so maybe that's why. Yeah, look, I remember going out with Sue and looking at the fruit, looking at the Cabernet that year, 2017, and it was she was not quite sure when to pull it in, and I really sort of felt the tension of that decision. It's really that defining moment when you suddenly have to make the call. Is this fruit ready? Is this going to be what I want? Is it not ready yet? But I recently got some of that wine and from that vintage, and it's beautiful, and it's quite an experience to know that you're sort of there at the front end of it. Look, yeah, Sue's touched on the creativity side of the process, and I guess there's a lot of technical expertise to wine production, and obviously the science that we investigate has a huge amount of technical elements to it. But yeah, through my conversations with Sue, as she flagged at the start, we started to talk about art, and I have never done much art, and she sort of invited me down to be a resident artist the subsequent year. So that was when I started thinking about how art intersects with my world, and how I could sort of bring chemistry into that and use it as an educational piece as well, as an engagement piece. And a lot of what we do in R&D investment is to support the communication of science to everybody, so that they understand the role it plays in wine and wine production. So yeah, Sue's showing you a couple of them, and then I'll just show you another couple that were close to me that I kept. So this one here is 3-mercaptohexanol, and this one is a really fascinating molecule. It's very potent. You don't need very much of it at all, and it gives a really tropical character, particularly to Sauvignon Blanc. It's quite iconic in Sauvignon Blanc. It can be a passion fruit character, quite obviously, and it can shift its tone a bit as it gets to higher and higher concentrations. But a lot of research has gone into understanding how it's formed and the roles of winemaking in releasing it and amplifying it. And yeast play a role, and chemistry plays a role, and decisions in the vineyard play a role. So it's a very complex molecule in terms of how you manage it, but it's one that probably made the greatest leaps and bounds in terms of knowledge over the last 10 years, I guess. And so we now know it's in Chardonnay. There's ongoing investigations to understand its role in reds, but yeah, this was my sort of take on it as an art piece. The other one that I was going to talk about today is 2-phenylethyl acetate, and this has a really kind of rosy character, and it's quite important in a number of varieties, and it can show up particularly obviously in whites, and one of the interesting things about it is that your yeast choice can have a profound impact on the amount of this molecule. So we say that grapes and wines are made in the vineyard, but the decisions that you make in the winery can massively amplify the impact. So just choosing one yeast or another to ferment your wine can result in up to tenfold difference in this molecule. So it can really strongly influence the character of your wine. So those two molecules are volatile aroma compounds, and they're fabulous and quite engaging because they have a singular character, and you can often pick them out and understand them. But most of my science career has been spent looking at non-volatile compounds, and these are compounds which you can't smell necessarily. You can taste them potentially, or they give textural characters or colour. And so this molecule here is delphinidin. It's an anthocyanin which is one of the 15 anthocyanins in most red varieties, and it's also found in delphiniums, the flowers, and it's got a more of a bluish hue, and it's really it's in the skins of the grapes, and it comes out, and part of the art and the technical elements of winemaking is capturing that and making sure that colour stays in there. And a lot of the reactions that go on with it occur with tannin. So tannin gets extracted out. Tannin gives a lot of texture and astringency and mouthfeel to wines, but they also play a really critical role in capturing these coloured molecules and preserving them for a long time, so that 10 years down the track, when you open a bottle of wine, it's not gone brown or even colourless. It's deep purple, and it's these sorts of molecules that keep it in there. And the last one I was going to flag today is wine lactone, and this is a really fascinating molecule because it's made from some other molecules at the start, but the acidic environment of the wine causes those molecules to rearrange into this shape, and it gives a really important coconut or woody character in some wines, and it can come from oak contact, but this molecule can actually come from grapes as well. So it's one of those interesting examples where you get a flavour from a range of different sources, and it's not always necessarily directly from the grape. The grape can make a certain compound, but the winemaking process creates new ones. So that's I guess a little bit of an insight into the interactions I've had with Sue over the years. I've always welcomed her perspective on real world winemaking and understanding the practical decisions, and I admire the effort she's put into building Bellwether, and the role, the passion that she puts into the place, and the welcoming character that she has to everyone who visits. Doesn't matter who you are or from what walk of life you are. Yeah, we really welcome our ongoing friendship, and I'm sure that, you know, in another 20 years we'll still be talking about art and science and how it all intersects. So yeah, I hope that gives you a bit of an insight into my experience with Bellwether, and you know, I thank you for joining in. Okay.